Hi guys, welcome back to the circuit. Thanks for watching. If you watched our previous videos, you know that we spent quite a bit of time in Maine this summer. We were there for a whole month. After we left Maine, we had plans to make our way over to upstate New York. But in between, we wanted to stop in Connecticut to see our son and several friends. Our plan moving forward is to head south to Florida for the winter, and next year make our way up through the middle of the country to Michigan. This means that we will probably not be back in New England until late next summer. So we wanted to make sure to touch base with everyone there before we took off for such a long time. If you've never been to New England, you may not realize just how small the states are there. It would take 13 hours to drive straight across Texas, but in only 5 hours, you could drive from Maine to New Hampshire, Vermont, down through Massachusetts and Connecticut, and over to Rhode Island. So in this video, we're going to do some state hopping as we make our way over to upstate New York. As you know, we try to only stay at Thousand Trails campgrounds because with our membership we can stay there for free. And we've stayed at some great campgrounds so far, but there are no Thousand Trails in Connecticut, so we thought this would be a perfect time to try out Boondockers Welcome. If you haven't heard of boondocking, it's kind of a loose term that basically means camping with no utilities, no sewer hookup, no electricity, no water. So you really have to rely on your holding tanks, your generators, batteries, and solar if you have it. And that also means you can't really run everything in the RV at the same time. I won't go into a ton of detail here, but there are lots of ways to boondock. If you haven't heard of Boondockers Welcome, it's sort of similar to Harvest Host, but you're staying at private homes instead of at businesses. And the nice thing about it is that you can stay for multiple nights depending on what the host allows, and also you don't have to buy anything there, so it is truly free. During this trip, we attempted to boondock at 3 locations. We succeeded at 2. One important lesson to learn when you live in an RV, especially a large one like ours, is that people are naturally curious and they're very generous in offering for you to bring your RV to their home. But sometimes what they don't realize is that even though they may have space on their property that will physically fit the RV, we may not be able to navigate the roads or the driveways to get into the space. Just because you can fit in the space doesn't mean you can get in the space. This was a problem we ran into at a family member's house in southern Maine. They had generously offered for us to stay in their yard for a couple of nights, and they cleared out an area where we could park. But when we arrived, the turn from the road into the space was so tight that we just could not navigate it. And after 3 hours of trying, yes, 3 hours, we decided to head to a nearby campground. We still had a wonderful visit with our family, but it was an important lesson. You don't want to assume that other people know your rig better than you do. And it's up to us to determine what risk we want to take to fit into a small space. After we left Maine, we hopped down to a campground in Massachusetts for just a few nights and then headed to our first Boondockers Welcome location in western Connecticut. This was where we were when we dropped off Ella at Jaren's apartment in the last video. I wasn't really sure what to expect. The only thing I knew was that the host said they had a very long driveway and that we would be parking next to their house. It's a little nerve-wracking to take our rig down a long, narrow dirt driveway, not knowing what's at the end. When we got there, it did take some maneuvering and we had to turn around, but we eventually fit next to their garage just fine. And it was nice that they had a 15-amp plug where we could plug in so we didn't have to use up our batteries. We also got to visit with some great friends here before heading west to New York. In Connecticut, they have something called rail to trail. They've taken old railway beds and then turned them into walking or biking trails. This is a great one that we were able to access right from the backyard of our Boondockers Welcome spot here in Granby, Connecticut. And you can see they've left a little bit of the railway line here against this newly paved part, which is a nice bit of history. And often you'll see along these trails, they've left the original railway station that used to be here, like this one in Granby. They're always cool to see. before we hit the road in our RV, we lived in Connecticut for 10 years. And when we lived in eastern Connecticut, we had a large house in the country that was about a mile from one of these rail-to-trails. We used to walk on it all the time, and we've really missed it. So being back in Connecticut is fun for us to be right on one of these trails. We're leaving our first Boondockers welcome site. We had a good day and a half here, 2 nights, and
great host, beautiful spot. Could go access to a nice walking, biking trail right off it, so it's wonderful.
And we are missing the cat crate in the back seat. Dropped off Ella last night.
I wouldn't say we're missing it, but it is gone.
And now Griffin has the whole back seat to himself. Griffin.
Griff. That's right, it's all yours now. Let's hit the road.
Now we're moving to our second Boondockers welcome in eastern New York. We're gonna stay there for 2 nights before we head to our next campground in Lake George, near the Adirondacks. But the first Boondockers welcome had a 15 amp plug that we could plug an extension cord into, which was wonderful because it was 90 degrees and we were able to run one of our air conditioners. But this next site does not have any utilities, so we're going to have to really get creative about being cool for the next 2 days.
We'll definitely break out the generator to charge up the batteries, every once or twice a day probably, and it's going to be a good test of that as well.
Just arrived at our second Boondockers welcome location outside of Saratoga Springs, New York. And there's a big wide area in the front of this property that the host said park anywhere off the driveway that you want. So Jason's gonna back into this grassy spot here. Beautiful location.
Hold that here, honey. Oh, thanks. I didn't know we were on set.
Breaking in the new generator
A
because
little bit after hours.
we're at a boondocking location that has no hookups or electricity. Let's see if we can get this running.
Could wait till tomorrow. Not that big a deal, but figured got nothing else to do.
Nothing like breaking out all your gear in someone's yard in the dark.
It's a pretty big yard. All right, come on back over here. Here's the battery. There's a lot of things that can go on. All right. Switch the battery on position. I'm going to guess about at least 50% of generators are first started under the cover of darkness. I think it's a small percentage that actually early, mid-morning, get most of it done, take a break, some lunch,
Eat
have
some
a
lunch.
sandwich, maybe go quick, a little nap, sometime mid-afternoon, get back to it. That's number 8. Electric start. Pushing all the start button until the generator starts. Well, that doesn't seem right. get out of here. We can boondock for days.
So this is where we're living today. Our Boondockers Welcome hosts have a beautiful riverfront yard down below their house, and they've said that we could use it. So we're gonna hang out here and work for a few hours.
Yikes.
Right?
More, yeah, tight and steep. More room for my tail end there. All right. I think you might have to hop out.
What does it say to do?
I don't know.
Not later. Okay, no one's there. I'm gonna walk up to the office. Can I have my mask? This site's a little tight. We're gonna cut back some branches.
You always say don't cut the trees. You gotta cut over.
You gotta cut something.
This is Woody. He's very nice to help us park today at Lake George.
That's good enough.
There you go.
Thanks, Woody.
Ah.
That's helpful.
We just hopped across the border to Vermont real quick to grab a geocache. We've been keeping track, and our goal is to get a geocache in all the 50 states, and we had 25. So today in Vermont will officially be past halfway, our 26th state, to find a geocache. Jason also reminded me that this will be our 200th geocache find, which is kind of cool. It's somewhere near this little bridge, but I don't think it's on the bridge. I think it's in these trees somewhere. We're gonna keep looking. Found it. It was in this bridge. I read one of the logs that said someone shoved it too far in and it was hard to get out. So I was looking in here.
I still don't see it, but
There's a little blue and yellow
right there.
canister in there.
that definitely does not get a tracker.
We may have mentioned before that we are what's down that road travelers. So we drive around to random places and we say, I wonder what's down that road. And then we just go see. So we just passed a sign that said Skane Manor Historical Site. So I looked it up. It's an old Victorian house of some judge who used to live here in Whitehall, New York. Go straight. And so we're gonna go see it. Yeah, here it is. Wow, what a view. We just missed it, it's already closed. But look at this beautiful house. It doesn't say, but I suspect that they are closed for COVID. The sign says closed till ? I thought that just meant it was closed for the day, but I bet it's not open. We are certainly not opposed to checking things out even when they're closed, because you can still get a good sense of what's here, and we probably won't ever be back here again, so let's check it out. We have lots more from our time in the Adirondacks coming next week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you then.